Here we are in section 7-4, exercises 25 through 36. We're asked to simplify, and remember that when we're dealing with i's, imaginary numbers, complex numbers here, complex arithmetic, notice we're getting division and multiplication. The simplification will always come from remembering that I is actually a square root. And that means when we square it, we get -1. We're back into the real world when we square imaginary units. All right, so let's go ahead and do it. Number 25, this is a binomial, and it's going to happen just like normal. We're going to get 10 plus, nope, not plus, minus 35i plus 6i, and then minus 21i squared. And this is where the simplification comes in. Oop, I just wrote a 2 there. 21i squared. And the simplification comes in that this guy is a -1, which means that really makes this a plus 21. That's what happens there. This is a plus 21. So this is a real number. That's a real number. That makes 31 minus 29i. And we'll turn all of them into the standard form of a plus bi. 31 minus 29i. Excellent. Number 26. Here we have 7 times 7 is 49. 7 times a positive 3i is plus 21i. Negative 3i times 7 is a minus 21i. And negative 3i times a positive 3i is a negative 9i squared. Yeah. And I squared is a -1, which makes that -1 times -9 a plus 9. Now notice what happens here. These two are conjugates. The middle terms cancel. The imaginary portion cancels, and we get 49 plus 9 is 58. Remember, that's a difference of squares. 49 and then minus the -9. That makes it a plus 9. So difference of squares, conjugates come up again and again. So conjugates get both terms out of the imaginary world back into the real world. Okay, number 27. 4 times -3, that's -12i. Then we get minus 20i. And then we get minus 6i. And then minus 10i squared. I squared is a -1, which makes the -10 times the -1 a plus 10, which gives us a -2 minus 26i. There we go, a plus bi format. All right, now we get into the division. And the division, really what's happening here with this division is we're going to, I is a square root, and we are going to rationalize the denominators just like we did back a couple of sections ago. So here, we got to times by something to make that a real number. Yeah, let's times by I, and we get 5i over I squared, which is a -1. So -5i is the answer. 5 divided by -1, that's just a -5. All right, number 29. Ooh, without the i's being by itself, we have to times by this conjugate, 2 minus 5i. 2 minus 5i. So we get 7 times 2, that's 14 minus 35i over, now the bottom, this is where the fun happens. 2 times 2 is 4, and then we get minus 10i plus 10i. That's where the magic of the conjugates happens. And then minus 25i squared. Notice the i's canceled. The I squared turns into a -1, which means this is 4 plus 25. That's 29. So to write that, we get 14 plus 30 minus 35i over 29. We can write it like 49 over 29 minus 35 over 29. And that's the real component, the imaginary component, just like that. Good. Number 30. Again, again, we're going to times by 7 plus 3i. That's the complex conjugate. 7 plus 3i here. And so we get 2. Well, let's go ahead and multiply that in. 2 times 7 is 14 minus 6i all over. 7 times 7 is 49 plus 21i minus 21i, and then minus 9i squared. Okay, so we get, what does that lead to? Let's not put the equal sign there. I squared is a negative 1. Negative 9 times negative 1, that's a plus 9 that comes there. 49 plus 9 is 58. So we get 14 minus 6i over 58. Let's separate it up into the two pieces. That's 14 over 58 minus 6 over 58i. These fractions can simplify. We get 7 over 29 minus 3 over 29i. Oh, is that a plus? Oh, yes, I did that wrong. That should have been a plus 6i. I apologize. 2, and that's a plus 6i, and that's a plus. There we go. Yes, that was 7 plus 3 I was timesing by. So 3 over 29i. Excellent. And that's written in A plus BI format. Oh, I guess we could have left that 2 out and canceled it with the 58 from the beginning. All righty. Okay, the next one. 31. Oh, this isn't a binomial on the bottom, so we can just times by I and times by I. And we get 3i plus 4i squared all over I squared, which is negative 1, which is negative 1. So this is negative 4. So we get, dividing by negative 1, we get a negative 3i plus a 4. Put the real part first. This is 4 minus 3i. That was an interesting one, moving that around like that. But yes, this is 4i squared, which makes it a negative 4. And then when we break it apart and divide each of them by a negative 1, it goes back to a positive 4. Fascinating. Okay, so the next one. We got number 32 here. Ooh, these look like they're going to get a little bit bigger because of, we got a binomial on the top and the bottom. So times by the conjugate, 3 minus 8i, 3 minus 8i on the top and the bottom. And that's going to equal, let me see, on the top we get, let's put these parentheses around it so it looks like what we've done in the past. 2 times 3 is 6. Minus 16i minus 21i plus 56i squared. Whoa. And on the bottom, 3 times 3 is 9, minus 24i plus 24i minus 64i squared. And notice on the bottom, that's why we times by the conjugate. This imaginary piece goes out in the middle, and we're left with just real numbers. I squared goes to a negative 1, which makes this a plus 64. I squared goes to a negative 1, which makes this go to a negative 56. And much of it is turned back into real numbers. That's why we times by the conjugate, so the bottom is completely in real numbers. So 9 plus 64, that is 73 on the bottom. And let me see, let's do the top is 6 minus 56. That's a negative 50 for the real number there. And negative 16 minus 21, that's a negative 37i. So we can write it as negative 50. There we go. Ooh, let me write that out just a little bit better. Negative 50 over 73 minus 37 over 73i in your A plus BI format. Man, that looks good. Okay, next one. Number 33. Let me see. Got a times by the conjugate, which will be negative 5 plus 3i on top and bottom. Negative 5 plus 3i on top and bottom. And we'll put the parentheses around there because we're timesing binomials. And let's see what that comes out to be. On the top, we get 3 times the negative 5. That's negative 15. And then 3 times the 3i, that's plus 9i, minus 10i, and plus 6i squared. 6i squared. Remember, I squared is going to go to negative 1, which means this whole term is actually a minus 6. And what do we get on the bottom? Negative 5 times negative 5, that's a positive 25. Minus 15i, plus 15i. Yeah, negative 3 times negative 5. Those guys go away completely. And then we have a negative 9i squared, which I squared is negative 1. Negative 9 times negative 1 is a plus 9. 25 plus 9 means our denominator is really 34. Look at that. Got rid of all the imaginary numbers by timesing by that conjugate. Okay, the top is a, let me see, negative 15 and negative 6 are the real numbers, 21. And the imaginary component is a plus 9 and a minus 10. That's a minus 1i. So writing in a plus b format, that would be negative 21 over 34 minus 1/34 I. So if that's I over 34 or minus 1 over 34 I, good deal. That looks sharp. All right, number 34. Oh, this is not a binomial. We don't have to times by a conjugate. We could just times by I. Times by I, times by I. We're left with 3i minus 4i squared over 2i squared. 2i squared is a negative 1. That means this bottom is really a negative 2. And this I squared is a negative 1, which means negative 4 times negative 1 is a positive 4. So we get 4 plus 3i all over negative 2. Let's break it up. So it's negative 4, wait, not negative 4. 4 over negative 2 minus 3 over 2 I. And 4 over negative 2 is just a negative 2. There we go. That's looking pretty sharp. All right, number 35. This is a binomial, so we need to times by the conjugate. It's 3 plus 2i, timesing in there, and 3 plus 2i on the top as well. All right, so multiply those two, and we have 15 plus 10i, minus 9 in there, that's minus 27i, and minus 18i squared all over. Oh, let's do that. I squared is negative 1, which means minus 18 times minus 1 is, that's a plus 18 right there. Okay, so on the bottom we get 3 times 3 is 9, plus 6i, minus 6i, and then what's next? Minus 4i squared. Okay, cool. Those go away. We did the conjugates thing, so negative 1 there makes that into a plus 4. So this is all over 13. Put it over 13. We get 15 plus 18, that's 33, and minus 17i. So write it in a plus bi format, 33 over 13 minus 17 over 13 I. Oh, that's looking sweet. All right, number 36. Final one. Let's get a good color here. All right, so we're going to times by negative 7 minus 3i, negative 7 minus 3i, and that's going to be the conjugate on the bottom, so we can get rid of those i's. And let's multiply. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so 5 times negative 7 is a negative 35. 5 times negative 3, that's a negative 15i. 2i times negative 7, that's a negative 14i. And then 2i times negative 3i, that's a negative 6i squared. I squared is negative 1. Negative 6 times negative 1 is a positive 6 over negative 7 times negative 7 is a positive 49. Negative 7 times negative 3i, that's a positive 21i. 3 times negative 7, that's a negative 21i. And 3 times negative 3i times negative 3i is a negative 9i squared. I squared is a negative 1. Negative 9 times negative 1 is a positive 9. Magic of the conjugates happens, and the i's are gone. They cancel out the middle terms, that plus 21i and negative 21i on the bottom. 49 plus 9 is 58. We got a 58 on the bottom. Okay. We've had that a few times, it looks like. Yeah. Okay. And so we're here with, negative 35 plus 6. That's negative 29. And then minus 15 minus 14 is a negative 29i. Oh my goodness. 29 can factor out of the top and cancel with that 58. So 58 is 29 times 2. So let's go ahead and write it out in a plus b format and then simplify it. Negative 29 over 58 minus 29 over 58i. 29 over 58 is 1/2. So this is actually negative 1/2 minus 1/2 I. And that's what it looks like simplified in a plus bi format. Excellent.